Good morning. Good morning to all. So how you all are? Good? Doing well? Yes? Good. So myself Sheth Bhartiya sir is taking you strength of material, right? And we have completed the shear study and we started a part of theory of failure. Okay. So you know my team, right? Which consists of 8 members with me leading the team and my team members including me are Abhishek, Shware sir, Chetan sir, Mrigant sir, Kshitiz sir, Ashwarya sir, then your Nitesh sir is there, Babulal sir, Mrigant sir, right? So, as you know about me that I have qualified GATE and ESC both and I have 5 years of teaching experience. I'm teaching since 2015, right? And the subjects I'm taking is strength of material, structure analysis, geotech, open channel flow, survey, environment and CPM part, right? So, thing is, you know very clearly that's a peak time for all the students to be serious for your career, right? Enough is the gap for everyone, right? So, if you want to go well, if you want to prepare well, if you want to do something good in your competitive exam, right? What you need to do just is to go for the subscription, right? And for the subscription, you just have to use my code to get the 10% instant discount. Okay, I'm repeating once more. For the subscription, you use my code that is BAR10, right? And you can get 10% instant discount. Okay, so let's start today's class. So in the strength of material, we have studied about the theory of failure. A part of the theory of failure, that is, we have talked about that when the structure is subjected to uniaxial loading, then the maximum value of normal stress or normal strain, shear stress or strain energy are reached simultaneously, because of which determining the cause of failure is not important. Yes, but when the matter is subjected to biaxial or triaxial loading, determining the cause of failure becomes important. Determining the cause of failure becomes important, and that's why we study the theory of failure. Okay. Yesterday we have seen the failure due to axial load and the torsional loading on the bar, right? For the both ductile and brittle material. Yes. So we have seen that yesterday. So those who have not attended that lecture, please attend that. Okay, after this class or wherever you feel time. Okay, so see here. In the theory of failure, there are different theories of failure, in which the first theory that we are going to see is maximum normal stress theory. The first theory is maximum normal stress theory. Second is in the same, it is also referred as principal stress theory. Principal stress theory. Okay, or we also write this as Rankine's theory. Rankine's theory. Okay, so these are the three different theories, and the different theory, the theory which has a different names. Okay, the name of maximum normal is coming from the point that we are considering the normal stress, that is maximum in magnitude, and we know that the maximum magnitude of normal stress at any point is nothing but principal stress, right? And since it is given by the Rankine, hence the name comes Rankine's theory. Okay, so what we basically do, suppose we take a material point and we are taking the structural element at that point. Okay, and on that point we are applying the yield stress so that the material get fail, right? So we find the yield strength of the material, that is sigma y. Okay, so sigma y is what? Yield strength of material. Yield strength of material. Okay, now on the same material, what I say that if this material is subjected to biaxial or triaxial loading, if this material is subjected to biaxial or triaxial loading, so this is a triaxial loading subjected to, let us say, the stresses are sigma p1, p2, p3. Okay, so what does this theory say? That according to the normal stress theory, if the maximum normal stress if the maximum normal stress due to biaxial or triaxial loading, if the maximum normal stress due to biaxial or triaxial loading reaches the yield strength of the material, when subjected to uniaxial, this is tensile test, not compressive test. So let me just change the direction. Okay. So what is said that if the maximum normal stress due to biaxial or triaxial loading reaches the yield strength of the material when subjected to uniaxial strength test, then the material will fail, right? So what is saying that, first write the statement. What is the statement saying? What is statement saying? The statement is saying that according to Rankine's theory, if the maximum normal stress due to biaxial or triaxial loading, reaches the yield strength of the material, when subjected to uniaxial tensile test, okay, uniaxial tensile test, then the material will fail. Okay, so that is your first statement. Is it clear? That is the statement given as per the Rankine's theory. Okay, so that was the statement. So let me put in the mathematical form, right? So what is saying that the maximum in terms of magnitude, so maximum of sigma P1, sigma P2, sigma P3, if it reaches means is greater than equal to, right, sigma y, right? If it reaches sigma y is more than sigma y, it is going to fail. Is it clear? It is going to fail. So suppose sigma P1 is maximum, so I'm writing sigma P1 is greater than equal to sigma y, right? This is still a fail condition. So what should be the safe condition? Yes, what should be the safe condition? This sigma P1 should be less than sigma y, yes or no? This is your safe condition, right? So for the design, what I do, why put factor of safety? For the design, what I do, the maximum normal stress that should be developed, that should be equal to yield strength upon factor of safety. That is the working stress, yes or no? So for design, we apply factor of safety. Is it clear? So this is for design. Is it clear? So for a civil engineering student, there is the scope of the asking of question for this theory is till here only. They cannot ask any other question from a civil engineering students. Yes, in the mechanical there are other things because the same thing they study in the machine design. Okay, but for a civil engineering, this is enough, right? So what they can ask you that the normal shear stress theory or the Rankine's theory is applied. So how you can find the maximum normal stress and so on. So this is the way they used to ask, right? So suppose I'm giving you normal stresses at a point, that is principal stresses at a point. So example, if I say principal stresses are 2 minus 4 minus 8, 2 minus 4 minus 8, sigma P1, P2, P3, whatever is there, right? So what is sigma normal, sigma max? According to this, sigma max is nothing but in terms of magnitude, right? Sigma max is nothing in terms of magnitude I'm talking. That is nothing but 8. I want only magnitude. Is it clear? But if I used to write sigma P1, I will write 2. Is it clear? Sigma P1 I will write 2. That's the maximum principal stress, right? Here I am talking, this is a maximum normal stress. This is a maximum normal stress irrespective of magnitude, irrespective of sign, irrespective of sign. And when I say sigma P1, this is maximum tensile stress, if you remember. Yes. So you need to consider the sign. Yeah. Okay. Got my point? Yes or no? Any doubt? Any doubt in this? Any doubt in this? Yes. Any doubt in this Rankine's theory? Any doubt in this Rankine's theory? Okay. One more point for a note. This theory gives good result for brittle material. These all are observations there. Brittle material. Okay. So these all are observations, right? So this is your first theory, that is maximum normal stress theory, or we say this as principal stress theory, or we say this as Rankine's theory, right? Okay. So moving to the next theory, second theory, that is your maximum normal strain theory, maximum normal strain theory, or we say this as principal strain theory, or we say this as Saint Venant's theory. Okay, so these are the different names of a given theory. Maximum normal strain theory, name itself is clear that normal strain is maximum, right? We are taking that point. Principal strain, we say that it's a principal strain. Again, I am considering the magnitude, right? Saint Venant based on the name of the scientist, right? So what does this theory state that? Just try to understand. Similar way, what we do for a particular point, if I draw the structural element, okay, and it is subjected to uniaxial tensile test, right? Okay, and we determine the strength, and on the same material, if it is subjected to biaxial or triaxial loading, on the same material, if it is subjected to biaxial or triaxial loading, okay, biaxial or triaxial loading. So what the statement says that, what is the statement? See here, it states that if the maximum normal strain due to biaxial or triaxial loading, if the maximum normal strain due to biaxial or triaxial loading reaches the yield strain due to uniaxial tensile test, then the material will fail. Is it clear? So above theory there was a stress. Yes, you can see there is a stress. Okay, and in the next theory there is a strain. Okay, so what the statement says? According to this theory, if the maximum normal strain due to biaxial or triaxial loading, reaches the if the maximum normal strain due to biaxial reaches the yield strain of the material when subjected to uniaxial strength test, then the material will fail. Is it clear? So here I am talking about the strain. Right? So what I can write for the strain, that if the maximum of epsilon P1, epsilon P2, epsilon P3, okay, if the maximum of epsilon P1, epsilon P2 and epsilon P3 is less than, or better to say, since I'm talking about the failure, so what I can say is greater than equal to strain due to uniaxial strength test, then I'm saying that the material is going to fail. Okay, so what I can write, suppose anyone is maximum, suppose epsilon P1 is maximum, so this is greater than equal to epsilon y, so we say that it is fail condition, it's a failure condition, right? So epsilon P1, what we can write for epsilon P1, come on, tell me, look at this diagram and tell me what I can write about epsilon P1. Yes, tell me what I can write about epsilon P1. Yes, tell me what I can write about epsilon P1. Yes, we can write this as, very good, sigma P1 by E minus mu sigma P2 by E minus mu sigma P3 by E, right? This we can write. And what I can write for epsilon y, it's a uniaxial. What I can write for epsilon y, nothing but, very good, sigma y by E, and this is your again fail condition, right? So what I need to do, I need to cut E, right? So if I cut E, what I get, sigma P1 minus mu sigma P2 minus mu sigma P3, this is greater than equal to sigma y, which is a fail condition. So what would be the safe condition? We keep it less than, yes or no? So sigma P1 minus mu sigma P2 minus mu sigma P3, if it is less than sigma y, it is a safe condition. And I told you, if I go for design, I need to apply the working stress. Yes, so for the design, what I'm saying, sigma P1 minus mu sigma P2 minus mu sigma P3 is equal to sigma y by E, right? This is your design condition. This is your design. Always remember, this is factor of safety, right? Always remember one thing, that this factor of safety is always applied with the yield stress. Why? Because we know that if you remember factor of safety, it is by yield strength upon working stress. Okay, always, yes or no? So if I'm saying that due to uniaxial loading, your load should apply till working stress, so working stress will be what? Nothing but yield strength upon factor of safety, yes or no? Yield strength upon factor of safety. So yield strength is what? Nothing but sigma y upon factor of safety. Are you able to get my point? Yes or no? So working stress is equal to sigma y by factor of safety. This we use for the design. Is it clear? So this maximum normal strain theory or principal strain theory or Saint Venant's theory, this theory is applicable for the that means we are considering the yield maximum strain, right? And we are equating the yield strain, and correspondingly we are getting the relation. Okay, now telling you very frankly, this theory is not so good, but sometimes we use it for the ductile material. this theory can be used for ductile material design Why? Because it gives better result compared to Rankine's theory. Because it gives better result for ductile material, better result compared to Rankine's theory. Nothing more than that. Okay, I am telling you again and again, they are not going to ask much detail in this for civil engineering students. They will ask the formula, right? They will ask the formula and they will use it along the principal stress, and they can ask a simple question, right? They can ask a simple question on this. So till now we have completed two theory. The first theory that I'm saying, that the first theory that we are seeing, that that's some maximum normal stress theory or principal stress theory or Rankine's theory, in which I was telling you that according to this theory, what I'm saying, that is the maximum normal stress due to biaxial loading or triaxial loading reaches the yield strength of the material when subjected to uniaxial test, then the material will fail. Whereas if I look at the maximum normal strain theory, then in this theory we are considering the maximum normal strain for the design. Is it clear? Right. So this we have seen. Okay, so two theories we have seen. Any doubt till now, please ask. Any doubt, please ask. Yes, any doubt? Any doubt you are having, please ask. Any doubt? Now what I'm going to do, I will be asking you doubts after completing of a particular part, right? So that our time can be utilized very properly. Now you all are very familiar with my teaching, so it's very easy for you to cope now. Okay, so you can do it very easily. Any doubt, you can please say to me in the comment section. Right. Okay. So third property. What is the third property? The third property is maximum shear stress theory. Maximum shear stress theory, or we say this as Tresca's or Guest-Coulomb theory. Again, the name of the scientist. So again, now it's maximum shear stress. So what will be the statement? Yes, what will be the statement? Yes, what will be the statement? Come on, tell me. What will be the statement? What will be the statement? What will be the statement? Yes, the statement will say that if the maximum shear stress due to biaxial or triaxial loading reaches the maximum shear stress due to uniaxial strength test, then the material will fail. Yes or no? Then the material will fail. Right. So, see here, if at one side, if on one part I apply the tensile strength test, that is sigma y I am getting, and on the other part I show you the different normal stresses, that is sigma p1, sigma p2 and sigma p3, right? So what does this theory say? That maximum shear stress theory or Tresca's or Guest-Coulomb theory, it says that, what is the statement? What is the statement? What is it saying? What is the statement? That according to this theory, if the maximum normal stress, maximum shear stress, so shear stress theory, so the maximum shear stress due to biaxial or triaxial loading reaches the yield strength of the material, material, that is reaches the better to say writing the yield strength, reaches the let me write that part first, reaches the maximum shear stress, reaches the maximum shear stress due to uniaxial strength test, then the material will fail. If you have solved the principal stress, you might have seen it is written in the use maximum shear stress theory or so on. Okay, so I'm writing then the maximum, then the material will, fail. Is it clear? Then the matter will fail. Right. So that is the statement. Now let us apply that. What is saying that tau max due to biaxial or triaxial, if it is greater than equal to tau max due to yielding, then I'm saying that it is a failure condition. Okay. So tau max, if it is a triaxial, we know there will be 3 tau max. Tau max 1, tau max 2, tau max 3, if you remember. Yes. And this I am saying is greater than equal to tau max due to yielding. Okay. So again it is a failure condition. Now, if you look at this tau max 1, if you remember, we suppose P1, P2, P3 are acting. So we say that tau max 1 is equal to sigma P1 minus P2 by 2. Tau max 2 P1 minus P3 by 2. Tau max 3 P2 minus P3 by 2. Yes. And it's a reversible also. You also know that. Right. So suppose out of the 3, I'm saying that tau max 1 is having the greatest magnitude. Okay. And this is greater than equal to tau max y. Okay. This is again a failure condition only. So tau max, what we can write? Sigma P1 minus sigma P2 by 2. Yes. This is greater than what is tau max y? Sigma y minus 0 by 2. Yes. So again this is a fail condition. Now common cut, 2 to cut. So get the value as sigma P1 minus sigma P2, which is greater than equal to sigma y. This is still a failure condition. Now for the safe condition, the sigma P1 minus sigma P2 should be less than sigma y. This is a safe condition. Right. But for the design, what I'm saying? That sigma P1 minus P2 must be equal to sigma y upon factor of safety. Always remember, the factor of safety will be going with sigma y. I'm repeating this again and again because this is the place where you commit the mistake. Is it clear? Right. This is clear, yes or no? So I'm telling again and again what they are going to ask. They are going to just mention the theory for the civil engineers that we are using this theory. So you need to remember this formula. They are going to ask this. Okay. And you should remember the names of the theory. So moving to the fourth theory. That is maximum strain energy theory. Maximum strain energy theory, or we say this as Belt-Remy Heath theory. Belt-Remy Heath theory. Right, based on the name of the scientist. Now, what I can say about this theory? Come on, tell me fast. What I can say about this theory? Till the time I am drawing the diagram, try to comment what I can say about this theory. Yes, what I can say about this theory. Yes, what I can say about this theory. Yes, what we can say that if the maximum strain energy due to biaxial or triaxial loading, reaches the maximum strain energy due to uniaxial strength test, reaches the maximum strain energy due to uniaxial strength test, then the material will fail. Then the material will fail. Then the material will fail. Right? So suppose if I say sigma P1, P2, P3, right? This is P1. Okay, this is P2, this is P3. Right. So what we know, what I'm writing, what is the statement I'm writing? What the statement I'm writing, that if the maximum strain energy, I hope my handwriting is very clear to you. Yes, if the maximum strain energy due to biaxial or triaxial loading reaches the maximum strain energy due to uniaxial strength test, then the material will fail. Then the material will fail. Is it clear? Are you getting my point? Yes or no? So what I am saying, that maximum, right, that is maximum strain energy due to biaxial or triaxial. So first of all, we should be finding what is the strain energy, right? So we know that strain energy, if I write the strain energy, that is U, strain energy due to uniaxial loading. Look at the loading. We know that we can write this strain energy in terms of sigma. Yes. So what we can write, sigma y square by 2e into volume. If you remember, I've already derived this. Yes, I've already derived this for you. Yes. So this we can also write as half into sigma y into strain in y into volume. Can we write? Yes or no? Can we write? Okay. So similar way, if there is a 3D loading, if it is a 3D loading, so U for three-dimensional loading will be what I can write. See here, U for three-dimensional loading, I am writing like this: half into sigma P1 into epsilon P1 plus sigma P2 into epsilon P2 plus sigma P3 into epsilon P3, and this multiplied with entire volume. Okay. Now I want the representation in terms of sigma, not in terms of epsilon. So I'm going to convert epsilon in terms of sigma, right? So half into sigma P1. What I can write about epsilon P1? Look at this diagram. What I can write about epsilon P1? Say dear. What I can write about epsilon P1? Yes. Nothing but sigma P1 by E minus mu sigma P2 by E minus mu sigma P3 by E. Is it clear? Right? Plus sigma P2 times. Similarly, epsilon P2 I can write as sigma P2 by E minus mu sigma P1 by E minus mu sigma P3 by E. Okay? Is it clear? Right. Plus sigma P3. What is epsilon P3? Nothing but sigma P3 by E minus mu sigma P2 by E minus mu sigma P1 by E. Is it clear? And this entire multiplied with volume V. So this is a 3D. Someone asked me earlier, sir, in the ESC conventional, they have asked you about the theory of failure. See, this is the only things they are going to ask. So let me rearrange this. So V by 2 is going out. It is out only. Now look here, sigma P1 square. We can also take E outside. Throughout E is there. Okay. You can see the first term. There is a sigma P1 square. Second term sigma P2 square. Third term sigma P3 square. And all are getting added. So I'm writing sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square plus sigma P3 square. Okay. Now, after this, look here. You get minus mu sigma P1 P2 minus mu sigma P1 P3 minus mu sigma P1 P2. Look at the second term. Minus mu sigma P1 P2 minus mu sigma P2 P3. Yes. After opening the bracket, you can see that. Similarly, in the other part also, minus mu sigma P2 P3 minus mu sigma P1 P3. That means each term, that is mu sigma P1 P2, mu sigma P2 P3, mu sigma P1 P3 are coming twice. Yes or no? So what I am going to do, I am going to take 2 common. I will write mu also common. Then I write sigma P1 P2 plus sigma P1 P3 plus sigma P2 P3. Is it clear? So this is your U 3-dimensional. So suppose someone asks you U 2-dimensional, what you are going to write? U 2-dimensional. So U 2-dimensional means what? I am doing sigma P3 is equal to 0. I am doing sigma P3 is equal to 0. So if I am doing sigma P3 is equal to 0, I will get V by 2E, right? Sigma P3 will be 0, so all the terms containing sigma P3 will be 0, right? So it is sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square plus sigma P3 square minus 2 mu, sorry, sigma P3 got 0, right? So I'm just writing directly minus 2 mu sigma P1 into sigma P2, right? So this is your U 2-dimensional. Is it clear? So someone asked you anything regarding this, you can easily get. You no need to mug up, you can automatically derive also if it comes in your exam, right? So this is your strain energy that you can see in the uniaxial and the biaxial or triaxial. Now let us come to the theory which says that according to theory, what it says that U 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional, that's U is nothing but strain energy. If this is greater than equal to U 1-dimensional yielding, then the material will fail. First, the basic, right? So what I can write about this, let us take 2-dimensional. So we'll write V by 2E. We'll write V by 2E sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square minus 2 mu sigma P1 into sigma P2. If this is greater than equal to V by 2E into sigma Y square, which you already seen, then the matter will fail, right? So we can cancel something, that is V by 2E, V by 2E. Yes or no? From here we get fail condition as sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square minus 2 mu sigma P1 into sigma P2. If this is greater than equal to sigma Y square, then the material will fail, right? So what is the safe condition? What is the safe condition? What is the safe condition? That sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square minus nu sigma P1 P2. If it is less than sigma Y square, then it is safe condition. Now I want to design. So to design, factor of safety power will be 1 or 2 in the denominator. Come on, tell me fast. Factor of safety that you are going to use will have the power of 1 or will have the power of 2. Come on, tell me fast. Yes. Very good. It is sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square minus 2 mu sigma P1 P2 if it is equal to sigma Y by factor of safety whole square, because I already told you the working will go along with the factor of safety, right? So you need to find working, so yield upon factor of safety whole square, and this is your design condition. Is it clear? This is your design condition. Okay, so this is your maximum shear stress theory. That's maximum strain energy theory. Shear stress we have seen just before, right? So we have seen 4 theories till now, and one more thing that you can write is this theory gives good result, gives good result for this theory gives good result for, yes, this theory gives good result for thick pressure vessels. Thick pressure vessel will study later, right? This theory gives good result for thick pressure vessel, right? And it is the second best theory for design of ductile materials, for design of ductile materials. Is it clear? So this is the theory. Any doubt in this theory, please ask. That I'm saying the maximum strain energy theory, that is also referred as Belt-Remy-Heth theory, based on the name of the scientist, right? So what is saying that the maximum strain energy due to biaxial or triaxial reaches the maximum strain energy due to uniaxial strain test, then the matter will fail. So we have seen how we are going to get the strain energy for the biaxial or triaxial loading, right? And then we have applied the condition, and we have seen the 2 statements given as per the theory. Okay. Second best theory. Any doubt? Okay then. Let us look at the 5th theory. 5th theory is maximum shear strain energy theory. Maximum shear strain energy theory, or we say this as maximum shear strain energy theory, or we say this as von Mises Hankey's theory. Von Mises Hankey's theory, or we say this as your what? We say this as distortion theory. Distortion theory. So what does this principle say? What does this principle say? That if the maximum shear strain energy, it's not strain energy, it is shear strain energy. So if the maximum shear strain energy due to biaxial or triaxial loading reaches the maximum shear strain energy due to uniaxial strain test, then the matter will fail, right? So I'm writing that first. No need to draw the diagram. Enough. What is the statement? That according to this theory, if the maximum strain energy due to by maximum shear strain energy, not only strain energy, maximum shear strain energy due to biaxial or triaxial loading reaches the maximum shear strain energy due to uniaxial strength test, then the matter will fail. Then the material will fail. Is it clear? So first of all, we should understand how to obtain the shear strain energy. Then we are going to look at the statement. So first thing we are going to see is what is shear strain energy? What is shear strain energy? What is shear strain energy? So try to understand the strain energy that you are writing. Strain energy that you are writing is a combination of normal strain energy, normal strain energy, normal strain energy and shear strain energy. Normal strain energy and shear strain energy. Okay, got my point. So strain energy, that is U. Okay, this I write as U normal plus U shear. So this is the formula. So from this U shear you can write as U minus U shear, you can write as U minus U normal. Write as U minus U normal. Okay, so we have seen that this shear strain is a combination, you can obtain by U minus U normal, right? So U, we know if it's subjected to three-dimensional loading, so we can write a U three-dimensional as sigma, that is, we have just seen the value, that is 1 by 2E into sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square plus sigma P3 square, okay, minus 2 mu sigma P1 into sigma P2 plus sigma P1 into sigma P3 plus sigma P2 into sigma P3. Is it clear? So this is the total strain energy that consists of both normal and shear. That means it consists of volumetric deformation also, that is caused due to normal stresses, and it consists of deformation, that is distortion also, that is caused due to shear, right? Now next I need to find U normal in three-dimensional. So this is nothing but we can write this as half into volumetric strain into volumetric stress, half into volumetric strain into volumetric stress, right, multiply with the total volume, right? Here also volume is applied. So what I am going to get here, volumetric stress, suppose P1, P2, P3 is acting. So what is the volumetric stress? Nothing but sigma P1 plus sigma P2 plus sigma P3 by 3. Yes or no? This is the volumetric stress. And what is the volumetric strain? We have used the formula sigma P1 plus sigma P2 plus sigma P3 divided by E into 1 minus 2 mu, and this multiply with volume. So from here what I get, sigma P1 plus sigma P2 plus sigma P3 divided by 6E into 1 minus 2 mu, this P1 plus P2 plus P3 square into 1 minus 2 mu multiply with V. So this is the U normal in 3 dimension. This is the U normal in 3 dimensional. Is it clear? This is the U normal in 3 dimensional, right? So if I substitute the value for the U shear, that is U shear is what? It should be very clear. When I say U total, try to understand. When I say U total, this is the strain energy due to both volume change and distortion. Is it clear? When I see the second one, that is the strain energy due to volume change. So the shear I need to find. So I'm going to just subtract it. Okay, so U shear is nothing but U minus U normal. So I am just going to give you the final result because it's not required to derive it. So this is just what you will get as 1 plus mu upon sig C. You need to rearrange this. You will get the value sigma P1 minus sigma P2 whole square plus sigma P1 minus sigma P3 whole square plus sigma P2 minus sigma P3 whole square. Right. See, I'm very specifying very clearly this is especially for the civil engineering students, because for a civil engineer you don't require to study that much about the theory of failure, because you just need to use it in the principal stress calculation, nothing more than that. Okay, this especially for the mechanical engineering students. Okay, so that's not that should not be a problem. Okay, just need to remember the different formulas. So this is for three-dimensional. This is for three-dimensional. Suppose I go for two-dimensional, for 2D. For 2D, I am taking sigma P3 equal to 0. So what will be the U shear? Nothing but 1 plus mu by sig C. Yes, sigma P3 I am taking equal to 0. So I will get here sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square minus 2 sigma P1 P2. Yes, here you will get sigma P1 square from the second term. From the second term you get sigma P2 square. That means this will become 2 times. Okay, so I will take 2 outside, so it will become 1 plus mu by 3e into sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square minus sigma P1 into sigma P2. Is it clear? So this is for two-dimensional. This is for two-dimensional. Right. For one dimensional, what you are going to say? Suppose sigma P1 is equal to sigma y and sigma P2 is equal to 0. Sigma P3 is also equal to 0. So what the value of U shear you are going to get? Nothing but 1 plus mu by 3e into sigma y square. So this is the value you get for yielding. This is for two-dimensional or three-dimensional. Right. So you can use any of the formula depending on the question that is given. Right. Now come to the theory. What does the theory say? What does the theory say? That U shear, that is shear strain energy, due to biaxial or triaxial loading, if it is greater than equal to U shear due to uniaxial strength test, then the material will fail. Right. So what I am going to write? 1 plus mu upon 3e into sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square minus sigma P1 into sigma P2. If it is greater than equal to 1 plus mu by 3e into sigma y square, then the material will fail. Yes or no? Right. So cut the common part, cancelled. So what I get? Sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square minus sigma P1 into sigma P2. If it is greater than equal to sigma y square, then the matter will fail. So when it can be safe? When it can be safe? Yes. When it can be safe? Yes, it is less than. Very good. So minus sigma P1 into sigma P2. If it is less than sigma y square, then the matter will be safe. And if I need to go for design, it will be sigma P1 square plus sigma P2 square minus sigma P1 into sigma P2. This is less than sigma y by factor of safety whole square. This is your design condition. This is your design condition. Is it clear? Is it clear? Yes or no? Is this point clear to all? Right. So at the end you need to remember this formula. That's it. For the objective, they are not going to ask any further question. And even for the conventional, they can ask in the civil engineer about the different theories, right? You need to find the sigma value for the different theories or the factor of safety for the different theories, right? Nothing more than that for the civil engineering students. For the civil engineering students. Earlier, see, when I used to teach mechanical and civil both, I used to deal complete about the different parts. But here you don't require it. That's why no need to deal with that, right? Since it's especially for the civil, so I'm dealing according to that. Okay. Okay, sir. Okay. Right. So if I just write a note that, what is the note that? This theory gives best result for ductile material. This theory is the best theory for the design of ductile materials. Is it clear? Is it clear? Right. So just look at this theory. Any doubt? See, when I'm saying that the U total is a combination of normal and shear, it is just a hypothetical, nothing more than that. Right? Just a hypothetical, no proof is there. Right? No proof is there. Just a hypothetical theory because it is giving nearly same result. Right? Yes, any doubt? Any doubt in this part? Yes? Is it clear? Okay. Okay. Now see, the sixth theory, moving to the sixth theory and last theory, that is Mohr Coulomb's theory. Mohr Coulomb's theory. Okay. So here it depends on the Mohr circle. We draw the Mohr circle. How? See, first of all, on the structural element, we apply the loading such that it gives sigma C max. That is, what is the maximum compression the material can withstand. Okay. Then on the same material, we do the tensile test and we determine sigma T max. We determine sigma T max. Okay. Thereafter, on the same material, since it's a Mohr circle, it's a 2D loading, cannot be 3D loading. Right. We see sigma P1 and sigma P2. Okay. We see sigma P1 and sigma P2. Right. So all the three cases, I draw the Mohr circle. For all the three cases, I draw the Mohr circle. So we know that any matter is the strongest in compression. So obviously sigma C max will be greater than sigma T max. So if I draw the Mohr circle for this particular first structural element, so one of the principal is 0, other is sigma C max, comma 0. Yes. So if I draw the Mohr circle, it will pass through origin. Right, like this. Okay. Then for the other side, if I draw, it is sigma T max because that's a separate structural element. So if I draw the Mohr circle, sigma T max should be less. So let's bring it down first. What up? Actually, some update happened to this particular software. Okay. So let us say sigma T max you are obtaining at this point. Okay. So if I draw the Mohr circle for this, you will get a smaller circle compared to sigma C max. Okay. You'll get this kind of circle. Now what I need to do, I need to connect with a common tangent. I need to connect a line with a common tangent. Right. So this common tangent is Mohr failure envelope. Mohr failure envelope. Is it clear? This common tangent is the Mohr failure envelope. Now suppose you have got the structural element due to the applied loading, and if this structural element, if I draw the Mohr circle, and if it lies within this, okay, if it lies within this Mohr failure envelope, right, if it lies within this Mohr failure envelope, then this is safe, but if it touches, suppose it is touching the surface or it is crossing the surface, right, then these two are referred as fail condition. Is it clear? So that's just a brief, nothing more than that. So to make it a numerical form, it is given that suppose here the value you are getting as sigma p1 comma 0, and the other side you are getting as sigma p2 comma 0. So you will get as sigma p1 divided by sigma t maths plus sigma p2 divided by sigma c maths. If this is greater than equal to 1, this we consider as fail, right? But if sigma p1 plus by sigma t maths plus sigma p2 by sigma c maths, if it is less than 1, it is safe. So this just for your brief, nothing more than that. This is enough. If you understand this is enough, right? Just look at it. Any doubt in the Mohr-Coulomb's theory? Ask. Any doubt in the Mohr-Coulomb's theory? Ask. Yes. Any doubt in this Mohr-Coulomb's theory? Yes. Yes. So let me brief all the different theories that we studied today. The first theory that we studied is the maximum normal stress theory, or we said this as principal stress theory, or we said this as Rankine's theory. Please don't go. I will be starting the deflection, right? So maximum normal stress theory or principal stress theory or Rankine's theory. What I'm saying about this theory, that if the maximum normal stress due to biaxial or triaxial loading reaches the maximum yield strength due to uniaxial strength, then the matter will fail. We have seen that. Then we have seen the maximum normal strain theory, right? We have seen the formulas are only important for you, nothing more than nothing else will be asked from you, right? Then maximum shear stress theory, then strain energy, then shear strain energy, right? Thereafter we have seen about Mohr-Coulomb's theory, right? So this theory that we have dealt is more than enough. You don't require anything else, right? So just go through this. Any doubt, please ask. Yes. Any doubt? Any doubt here? Any doubt here? Okay. Okay. So now I will be starting next chapter, that is chapter number 8. The first was your introduction chapter. The second was your stress chapter, simple stress. Third was your SFD BMD. Fourth was your principal. Fifth was bending. Sixth, shear. Seventh, theory of failure. Now we are proceeding with the 8th chapter, that is deflection. And someone asked me yesterday, sir, will it be possible that we will be completing the syllabus by 13? No, it's not possible, right? So what we will do, we will arrange some special classes, right? I will inform you about that special class 2 days before the end of the classes, right? And you can see all the other classes over there, right? Not a issue. Okay, because I don't want to disturb any other schedule of other faculties. Let it continue, right? So please don't take tension about the scheduling, right? That leave it for me. Okay. So this deflection, what do you understand? What do you know about this deflection? First, you should know, right? So suppose I'm taking a cantilever beam. Okay, I'm taking a cantilever beam of length L and the end points are A and B. Okay, let us say, and it is subjected to the point load of P, right? There is a neutral axis. There is a neutral axis, and we know that due to the applied load, it is going to bend. Yes, it is going to, just a minute. Due to the applied load, it is going to bend. Okay, it is going to bend. So due to this bending, you can see that at the each section there is some slope, there is some deflection towards the bottom. So this slope or deflection we always take with respect to the neutral axis. That is, you can see that A point, if I take from the neutral axis, or better to say, rather than saying this, this move to A dash, right? So this is your deflection delta, right? That is this we write delta as deflection. Okay, this we write delta as deflection, and the angle, the tangent at the slope is making with respect to the horizontal, this I'm referring as theta, this is the slope. The angle that the tangent is making with the horizontal, that is the slope, right? So we need to know about this deflection and slope. We need to know about this deflection and slope. Is it clear? Is it clear? Right. So first of all, you should understand that this is the elastic curve. Okay, and since it is bending, so from the assumptions, it will bend in the form of an arc. It will bend in the form of a arc. Is it clear? It will bend in the form of a arc. So we know that since it's a curve, so there should be an equation. There is an equation of elastic curve. There is an equation of elastic curve. What is the equation saying that? Suppose R is the radius of curvature. Then what is 1 by R? What is 1 by R? Come on, tell me. If R is the radius of the curve, then what is 1 by R? I've already taught you. Yes, what is 1 by R? What is 1 by R? Yes, what is 1 by R? Nothing but curvature. Yes or no? 1 by R is nothing but curvature. Right. So 1 by R we write as equal to d2y by dh2. Double differentiation of the deformity, that is deflection, upon 1 plus dy by dx whole square whole to the power 3 by 2. Now this is the equation of elastic curve. This is the equation of elastic curve. Now we'll see certain assumption. See, for a beam or any other structure, y is very less. Y is very less. So if y is very less, then dy by dx is also very less. Yes or no? Is also very less. And if dy by dx is very less, then d2y by dh2 is negligible. Then d2y by dh2 will be negligible. And if it is negligible, right, or better say dy by dx whole square, rather than saying this, we are saying that dy by dx, suppose a very small value is 0.0001, right, and I'm squaring it, so it will be very less. Yes or no? So I'm making it equal to 0. Okay, so if I'm making it equal to 0, what you are going to get? 1 by r is equal to d2y upon dh2. Is it clear? 1 by r is equal to d2y upon dh2, right? So this I got from the assumption. Now from bending equation, from bending equation. From bending equation, what I'm going to write, m by I is equal to sigma by y is equal to E by R. Okay, so from here, what I get as 1 by R, we can write this as m by EI, yes or no? We can write this as m by EI, yes or no? So if I say this is my first equation, this is my second equation, so I put 2 in 1, put 2 in 1. So what I can write, m by EI is equal to d2y upon dh2, yes or no? So from here, what I write, m is equal to EI d2y upon dh2. Okay, so this is the one equation. Now just look at it very carefully. So this is the equation you are obtaining. What I am saying, what is y? What is y? Nothing but deflection. Y is nothing but deflection, that is vertical movement of any point due to the applied load, that is y. What is dy by dx? It is nothing but slope, which we referred as theta. What is d2y by dh2? What is d2y by dh2? This we write as 1 by r, that is curvature, or is equal to m by ei. Okay, yes. What is dqy by dh3? d3y by dh3, yes. Can we write this as 1 by ei dm by dx? Yes or no? That is nothing but v by shear force upon ei from the empirical equation. Yes. Similarly, what is d4y by dh4? Nothing but 1 by ei d2m by dh2. Yes, that is equal to 1 by ei dv by dx, which is equal to, we know that load intensity upon ei, if you remember. Yes, so in the exam, suppose they have given you the load intensity varies as d4y by dh4 is equal to, and you don't know what is d4y by dh4, then you are not going to get the answer. Yes, so you should understand this point. What do you mean by dy by dh, d2y by dh2, then dqy by dh3, then d4y by dh4, right? So this is the way they can ask you the question, right? Any doubt till here? Any doubt till here in the deflection? Yes, any doubt we are having till deflection here? Yes, any doubt? Any doubt? Yes, is it clear? Is it clear? Yes, is it clear? Is it clear? Yes, is it clear? Okay, okay then, okay then. Now look, next I'm talking about sign convention. Before actually moving to the any step, we'll look at the sign convention, because sign convention is one thing which is very important in the deflection for the answers that you got for using the different method. Okay, so let us look at the sign conventions. The first sign convention, first way of looking at the sign conventions here, depends on how you are taking the section. Suppose this is a cantilever beam. Okay, this is a cantilever beam, and this cantilever beam is subjected to UDL. Okay, so we know that this cantilever beam is going to bend, right? It's not linear, it's a curve. So suppose it deflects by delta, right? And the slope is theta. Okay, so now for the analysis, suppose, what color I choose? Okay, so for the analysis, suppose you are moving right to left at a distance, right? So you are taking any section at a distance h. That means you have considered left horizontal direction as positive and right horizontal direction as negative. Downward deflection is always negative, so I'm writing minus y. and upward deflection is always positive, that is plus y. So if any particular point, if any particular tangent is coming in the plus quadrant, then the slope will be positive. If it is coming the plus minus quadrant, the slope will be negative. If it is coming the minus quadrant, the slope will be positive. Right? It is coming the what? Plus minus quadrant, the slope will be negative. This is minus plus quadrant, right? Okay, got my point. So suppose I'm drawing the different tangent. So always remember the angle you will take with respect to horizontal. The angle you will take with respect to horizontal. So this is theta A, theta B, theta C, theta D. Right. So theta A, since it is lying the minus x plus y quadrant, it is negative. Theta B, since it is lying the minus quadrant, it will be positive. Theta C, since lying in the plus minus quadrant, it will be negative. Theta D, since lying in the plus quadrant, it will be positive. Is it clear? Yes, is it clear? Right. Got my point. So this is the way you decide the sign convention. See, first of all, that which quadrant it is lying, right? It depends. The sign convention entirely depends how you are taking the section. Whether you are taking the increasing value of h towards left or you are taking towards right. In this current case, we are taking towards left. So that's why plus h is towards left, minus h towards right. Downward is always negative, upward is always positive. So one thing, it is very clear that delta is negative, sin deflection is downward, right? And you can see this tangent. This tangent is lying in the minus quadrant or plus quadrant. Okay, so this will be positive. Okay, you can replicate it from the second. If I write this as first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, or fourth quadrant, you can see that this particular tangent can be lying either in the second quadrant or in the fourth quadrant. Is it clear? Any doubt in this, please ask. Any doubt in this sign convention, please ask. Yes. Any doubt in this sign convention, please ask. Yes. Any doubt in this sign convention, please ask. Yes. So what I am saying, that you can see that this theta, that is clockwise, right? That is clockwise, is lying the either second quadrant or the fourth quadrant. So it will possible. Or we can give one more thing, that means if I am moving right to left, if theta with respect to horizontal, you can see that the theta is positive in the second and fourth quadrant. Yes or no? Can you see that the theta is positive in the second and fourth quadrant? And the theta is positive in the second and fourth quadrant. Then what is the direction of theta? Clockwise or anti-clockwise? Yes, look at this. Second and fourth quadrant, what is the direction of theta? Clockwise or anti-clockwise? Yes, it is clockwise. Very good. So it is clockwise. Is it clear? It is clockwise. Okay. So theta with respect to horizontal, it is clockwise. Similarly, if I move right to left only, theta clockwise is positive. So look at the other part. If you look at negative part, then you can see that the theta are negative in the first and third quadrant. That is, theta will be anti-clockwise, and you get the negative value. Is it clear? Is it clear? Yes or no? Right. So that you can understand once you go for the practice, once you do the practice, you will understand this part. Okay. Okay. Now, suppose I am taking the mirror image of the beam. Let us apply the load. Now I am taking the section from left to right. So if I'm taking the section from left to right, so where is my increasing direction? If I'm taking the section from left to right, where is my increasing direction? Yes. If I'm taking the section from left to right, where is my increasing direction? Yes, that is towards right. So you are right. So plus h minus h. Right. If I look at the transverse, so upward it is plus y, downward it is minus y. Right. So if I draw the different tangents, 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are the different tangents, and these tangents we are drawing with respect to horizontal. Right. So let me write the slope also, theta A, theta B, theta C, and theta D. So if it is lying the plus y plus quadrant, so theta will be positive. If it is lying the plus minus quadrant, the theta will be negative. If it is lying the minus minus quadrant, the theta will be positive. If it is lying the minus plus quadrant, the theta will be negative. Right. So what conclusion you are getting? What conclusion you are getting? That while moving left to right, theta, if it is clockwise, then what will be there? If it is anti-clockwise, what will be there? Come on, tell me fast. Tell me fast. Yes. Yes. Left to right theta, clockwise, anti-clockwise. Yes, I'm saying that theta, if you look at the quadrant where it is positive, it is anti-clockwise. Yes or no? So anti-clockwise I'm taking as positive. And look at the next quadrant where theta is negative. Both are clockwise. So you can see that clockwise is negative. So reverse in case of left to right compared to right to left. Is it clear? Is it clear? Right. So tell me one thing. If I draw the deflected shape, right, then at this point, free end, if I look at the deflection and if I look at the slope, so delta is positive or negative? Is negative for sure. What will be theta? Look at the direction of theta with respect to horizontal. Clockwise or anti-clockwise? Clockwise or anti-clockwise? Come on, reply. Clockwise or anti-clockwise? It is anti-clockwise, and anti-clockwise will take as positive. So theta will be. Got my point, sir? Yes. Is it clear? Yes. Is it clear? So sign convention, is it clear for deflection? Yes. Is the sign convention clear in the deflection? Yes. Come on, say. Okay. Okay. Now before moving to the standard methods for finding the slope and deflection, we are looking at some standard values of slope and deflection which you need to remember. Standard values for slope and deflection. These are some standard values which you should remember. These are the standard values which you should remember. So the first, a simply supported beam subjected to point load at the center. Suppose P load is there, it is acting at the center. Right. Let's say the points are A, B, and C. So if the points are A, B, and C, we can see the deflected shape. We can see the deflected shape. Yes. So if you see this deflected shape, look at this very properly. If you see this deflected shape, you can see that there will be slope at A, there will be slope at B. Okay. And since it is symmetric, the central slope, that is theta C, will be 0. And the central deflection will be maximum. Yes or no? Right. And since it is symmetric, theta A will be equal to theta B. Can anyone tell me what is the value of theta A and theta B? Yes. Can anyone tell me what is the value of theta A and theta B? Yes. Nothing but PL square by 16 EI. Theta A बराबर theta B बराबर PL square by 16 EI. Right. And delta mass that is occurring at the center, delta mass will be PL cube by 48 EI. So all these you can derive with the different formulas we are going to deal, different methods that we are going to deal just now or tomorrow after all the standard formulas, you know, right? And these standard formulas, what you need to do, you need to prepare a sheet, a formula sheet in which you should have all these formulas, because this is very important for the SOM and even when you study the structural analysis. Anything you can understand if you understand this deflected shape and the formulas. Second is a cantilever beam subjected to point load at the free end. Yes, come on, anyone can tell me the value? Can anyone tell me the value? Can anyone tell me the value? Yes, can anyone tell me the value? Yes, yes. If you look at the deflected shape, it is going to deflect downward. That is hogging, right? And the maximum deflection you can observe at B, delta max, right? And at B, there will be the slope, that is theta, that is nothing but maximum. So this theta is given as PL square by 2 EI and delta max is given as PL cube by 3 EI. Okay, so again another formula. So till now we have discussed two formulas, that is two different cases and total 4 formulas, right? Third case, very important, in which most of the students make error because they don't understand the direction of movement. So I'm applying the concentrated moment M. I'm applying the concentrated moment M at the free end of a cantilever beam. Now tell me one thing, it will go up or down? Come on, tell me one thing, whether the free end B will go up or down? Yes, yes, will go up or down? Come on, see, try to understand. Yes, it will go up or down. Come on, comment fast. It will go up or down. With this moment you are seeing, it will go up or down? Yes, with this moment that you are seeing, the beam will deflect upward or downward at the free end. Come on, think. Come on, think. Yes, come on, think. So what I'm saying, see here, what is going to happen? We know that if I see the reaction, this is the moment reaction. Now see this properly, it is sagging or hogging? Yes, it is sagging or hogging? Yes, it is sag or hog? It is hog. So what will happen? This free end will try to move upward due to hogging, right? But at the fixed end, you cannot see any movement because the translation is restricted. So it will move up. Is it clear? So if I say the deflection at the free end is delta, that is maximum. Yes, and the slope is theta, that is again maximum, right? So this theta is given by ml by ei, okay, and this delta, that is given by See, I've already marked in where I'm talking about the theta and delta. And I want just standard case. Okay, so I'm giving just the standard cases. So theta barabar ml by and delta barabar ml square by 2 ei. ml square by 2 ei. Okay. ml square by 2 ei. So this is your third case. Right. Let us look at the fourth case. Let us look at the fourth case. Most probably last week I will be live. Last week I will be live. Yes, few students like Avinash was saying that, sir, when you are going to come live next week, most probably my pen tab is going to come and I will be live with you. Okay. So the fourth case is, it is a fixed beam subjected to point load at the center. Subjected to point load at the center. Fixed beam subjected to point load at the center. So if I draw the deflected shape, the slope at A will be 0. Yes. Slope at C will be 0. Yes. And slope at B will be 0. Right. So what I'm saying that slope at A, slope at B, and slope at center will be equal to 0. And you can clearly see that the maximum will occur at the center. So this delta max will be 1/4 of PL cube by 48 EI. 1/4 of PL cube by 48. If you see here, I'm zooming out, you can see that in the simply supported beam, the maximum deflection on PL cube by 48 EI, but if both the ends are restricted to rotate, then the maximum deflection at the center with the loading we have taken same, the maximum deflection at the center will be 1/4 of its deflection. Is it clear? Is it clear? Right. So this is your fourth case. Now, you need to remember this. I am telling you again and again, make a formula sheet. You have to put this in your formula sheet. Okay. Now there is a simply supported beam, and this simply supported beam is subjected to UDL. Let us say the UDL is W kilonewton per meter and the total length is L. So again there is a symmetry. So if there is a symmetry, what is going to happen? The deflected shape will be symmetrical such that the slope at the supports will be equal and the maximum deflection will occur at the center. The maximum deflection will occur at the center. So if the total length is L, the center will be at L by 2. This is from the symmetry, okay? So what is theta A? What is theta B? It is nothing but WL cube. WL cube by 24 EI. Okay. And the maximum deflection, delta max, very well known formula, that is 5 by 384 WL power 4 upon EI. Okay. See, these are the standard cases that I'm repeating again and again. Why I'm repeating? Because you'll think, sir, you are giving only the formula. How this formula is coming? So how this formula is coming, that you can see when you will be learning the different methods to get the slope and deflection. Okay, from there you can understand how these are coming. So, but we need to present all this at one place so that it is easy for you to remember. That's why I'm writing it over here. Okay, next case is a cantilever beam subjected to UDL of W kilonewton per meter and the length is L. So again, if you look at the deflected shape, it will bend in the form of an arc with the maximum at the free end, delta max, and slope is also maximum at the free end. Right. So this theta maths and delta maths, theta maths is given as WL cube. Look very properly when I'm using cube, when I'm using only L, when I'm using L square, right? It is very important. When I'm using L power 4, so WL cube by 6 EI. Okay. And delta maths, we write as WL power 4 by 8 EI. WL power 4 by 8 EI. Okay, so that is theta maths and delta maths. Fifth, that is 6, no, right? No, get 7. So in the 7th part, I'm taking the fifth beam. In the 7th part, I'm taking the fifth beam. And this fifth beam is subjected to UDL of W kilonewton per meter with the length of the beam as L. With the length of the beam as L. Right. So if I draw the deflected shape, you can see that the slope at the ends is 0 and slope at the center is also 0. But the deflection is maximum at the center. Deflection is maximum at the center. So delta maths we write as 1 by 5 into 5 by 384 WL power 4 upon EI. Why I am writing this? Again, what is 5 by 384? WL power 4 by EI. It is the maximum deflection that you observed in case of simply supported beam. Yes? So that is the maximum deflection that you observed in case of simply supported beam. So when the ends are fixed, when the slope is restricted, the deflection will reduce at the center. And by how much times? It is 1/5 times. Is it clear? So this is your 7th one. 8th, let us look at 8th. So in the 8th part, it is saying that if I say there is a simply supported beam and I apply a concentrated moment M, So if I apply a concentrated moment M, what will happen? The slope at both the ends are not equal. The end where you apply the moment, the slope will be more. The end where the slope moment is not applied, the slope will be less. And again, the maximum deflection will not occur at the center, but nearby center, close to a support, right? So what are the standard values? Theta A will be equal to ML by, say length is L, ML by 3 EI. Very important where I will be dealing the structure, very important. Theta B will be ML by 6 EI. Okay. And delta maths will be equal to ML square by 9 root 3 EI. So this are the equations, right? So this is your 8th one. 9th, if I look, so 9th is, if I take a simply supported beam and is subjected to moment from both the ends. Okay, so if it is subjected for moments from both the ends, what you can see, the slope at both the ends, will be same, right? And the maximum deflection you can see at the center. So if the entire length is L, the maximum deflection you can see at the center, right? So this I am saying as delta maths. Is it clear? So this theta A will be equal to theta B will be equal to ML by 2 EI, right? And this delta maths will be equal to ML square by 8 EI. All these formulas will be important once we will be using in the objective. In the objective, it's not that you can't solve without this formula. You can solve, but it will take more time if you don't remember this formula, right? 10th is a simply supported beam is subjected to moment at the center, right? So if a simply supported beam is subjected to the moment at the center, what will happen? It is going to bend somewhat in this form, right? So if I say the slope at A is theta A, slope at B is theta B, and slope at C is theta C, right? So theta A and theta B will have the same magnitude but opposite direction, you can see that, but the value will be equal to ml by 24 EI, and this theta C will be equal to ml by 12 EI. Is it clear? So for you, these are the standard cases that you should remember, yes, that are coming. Don't need to remember any other formula, right? So if you remember these values, you can solve any question that is directly asked. I will deal it later, right? You can answer any question regarding this standard values for slope and deflection. Yes, can deal any question regarding the standard values for slope and deflection. Is it clear? Is it clear? Right? Is it clear? So see here. I hope these are standard. See, one more thing. Here I am writing only magnitude. I haven't written any sign. Okay, I haven't written any sign. This is only magnitude. If sign is considered, then plus minus is going to come, right? But I haven't considered any sign. These are just the magnitude. Okay. So let's see what are the different methods to determine slope and deflection. Methods to determine slope and deflection. So the first method is double integration method, most famous method, double integration method. Okay. The second is Macaulay's method. Macaulay's method. Third is your strain energy method. Strain energy method. Fourth is your area moment method. Area moment method. Fifth is your conjugate beam method. Fifth is your conjugate beam method. Conjugate beam method. Sixth is your superposition method. It's actually not any method. I will deal this later. It's superposition method. Let me first write all the names. Right. Sixth is your Maxwell reciprocal theorem. Maxwell reciprocal theorem, right? And last, eighth one is your Bette's theorem. Bette's theorem, right? So these are the 8 methods, right, that we are going to see, in which for the conventional only we need to study these 2 methods. for conventional, for ESE conventional, we need to study these two methods, right? Rest all methods that you are seeing on the screen, that is strain energy method, area moment method, conjugate beam method, superposition method, Maxwell and Beatty's theorem, right? This you can use for the objective, right? If out of the standard cases you are getting, if the standard cases is applying, we will be using the superposition most of the time for standard cases, right? For non-standard cases, we'll use Maxwell and strain energy. Non-standard cases, we can use these four formulas, right? Non-standard cases, right? And that too, in this non-standard cases, this strain energy method gives best result, gives accurate result. There might be error. Why there will be error, I will let you understand. So out of all the methods, the strain energy method will give you accurate result. Is it clear? Right. So we see all these theorem tomorrow, one by one. Beatty's theorem, this if I talk about Beatty's theorem, this generally used for ESE objective. So I've classified all the different methods. No need to get confused. So when to use which formula, right? I've classified it very properly for you. Okay. Is it clear? Is it clear? Right? So I hope you enjoyed the today's class, right? But the thing is, are you able to solve the numericals? That is very important. Are you able to solve the numericals on your own? If it is possible with you that you are able to solve the numericals on your own, then you can go with this YouTube only. But 80 to 90% students are not able to manage the numericals on their own, right? So what we are having on the Unacademy Plus, you can see here doubt clearing sessions and RIB. Can you see that? Can you see this? RIB and doubt clearing sessions. Yes, these are the two sessions which are specially meant for questions, right? And are you able to assess, see that whether your performance is getting better or not? Yes. If it's not possible within you, here there are weekly tests. We have the weekly test, and these weekly tests are important for your seeing that whether you are going on right path or not. It's not possible on the YouTube. We cannot conduct the weekly test and all because entire schedule is completely filled with the technical activities. Yes, so it's not possible over here. Okay, so that you can understand. So if that is the advantage of the subscription, so you can select any batch for the subscription. The way of the teaching is completely different over there. There are separate doubt clearing sessions that you can see. And if you want to go for subscription, just select the goal by going the Unacademy app, or you can access from the desktop also, right? Then select the goal, that is GATE and ESE or any other which you want, right? Go and get subscription, click on the get subscription, select a plan, preferably I would say either the 12 months or 24 months. That is a better for all, right? Use my code, that is BAR10. You will instantly get 10% discount, right? And you can have the option of debit card and credit card also for the EMI, right? Those who can't pay at once, they can use the option for the EMI, right? Now, those who have joined just now, just join the Facebook group for the doubt clearance, right? All the class notes will be available on the Telegram group. So please join that, and please share more and more, subscribe to our channel. Let's make this as a one-stop solution for all civil engineering students, right? And hope for the best, right? So all the best. We'll meet tomorrow then with the theory, your deflection methods. Okay. Thank you so much.